Hello, I'm Victoria O'Malley, a doctoral student in the EDD program at Northeastern University, and in this presentation I'll be covering the proposed elements of my dissertation, tentatively titled Promises to Keep, Brand Alignment with the Student Experience. The New York Times estimates that we're each exposed to 4,000 advertisements a day. Now, while that number may seem a little high, consider the branding surrounding you right now as you listen to this presentation. The device you're watching this on, the drink you're sipping, even the watch you're wearing, all have a brand name on it. Good or bad, branding is a significant part of our life, and this doesn't stop in higher education. But are the marketing messages true? And what kind of impact does this have on students? The topic for this proposed doctoral research is the fidelity of institutional brand promises. Now, let me add a little bit more context to this proposed area of study and dig deeper into the issues surrounding branding and higher education. First, a brief definition of branding, just to set us up here. Branding stems from corporate communication strategy. Branding aims to differentiate an organization based on what it offers and what it stands for, essentially boiling down to an organization's identity and basically the promises made to a consumer. Throughout this presentation, I may use the term branding or marketing interchangeably, as marketing essentially refers to the way the brand is communicated to individuals through different information sources. It should also be noted that branding for academic institutions is a relatively new concept with limited research on it. There are several factors in the macro environment that has led to this research. Marketing spending at universities has reached an all-time high, with marketing and branding initiatives reaching $1.65 billion in total marketing spend in 2016. The number today is even higher. This demonstrates the importance of marketing within higher education as it becomes a bigger part of higher education budgets across the country. Additionally, we see a shift in the way students are viewed by institutions, now becoming more akin to consumers rather than anything else. Another key factor, if you will, is the rise of competition among educational providers, whether it's a coding boot camp down the street at a local company or a graduate degree from an institution that's accredited. There are more ways for consumers or students to tap into education than ever before. Finally, one of the most important problems within the context of this research is the growing and troubling trend of predatory marketing and recruiting practices. So in terms of what I'm attempting to repair or restore within our society through this research, I'm looking to improve the ethics of marketing in higher education. And by showcasing some of the experiences of students, I may be able to demonstrate the impact of branding. This leads to my research question. How do the lived and told stories of online continuing education students align or not align with the branding and marketing promises made by institutions? I think this is an important question to ask because it considers accountability and ethics of institutions and ultimately the satisfaction of students. The literature shows us that branding plays a significant role in choosing an institution and how satisfied or loyal a student will become once they attend. So while there is plenty of research about the importance of effective branding, particularly if you widen the scope to include research in the business field and not just higher education, I think the real opportunity here for this research lies in the impact of branding and if and how brand promises align with student experiences. I think the cynic in all of us think that there's little to no alignment between the institutional promises being made and the reality of the student experience, but we don't actually know this for sure. There are likely varying levels of alignment if you look at multiple institutions, and more importantly, the question around impact of this alignment on the individual student needs to be addressed. Keeping all of this in mind, the purpose of this phenomenological study will be to understand the experiences with institutional branding had by adult continuing education students at online institutions. At this stage in the research, fidelity of branding will be generally defined as the confirmation or disconfirmation of student expectations as shaped by institutional branding and marketing efforts. So I'm planning to focus in on the adult continuing education population for a few reasons, and I just wanted to address this really quickly. First, the research shows that there is more potential for, let's call it, misalignment of brand promises and reality for the for-profit institutions, many of which operate solely online. If you think about the students pursuing online programs, they must have been exposed to some kind of marketing or branding message to even know that these programs exist, particularly if they live further away from that brick and mortar institution. And finally, I'm personally and professionally invested in knowing more about adult learners studying online because, well, first of all, I am a doctoral student pursuing an online degree, and I also work for a continuing education college that primarily offers online programs. So this is a good segue into my positionality and why I'm the one to do this work. Working as a marketing practitioner for more than a decade at this point, I am deeply connected to this work. I spend my days creating messages and designing ads that essentially are intended to persuade prospective students to attend my institution instead of yours, right? This is admittedly a lot of power, and I want to ensure my community of practice is being as authentic and ethical as possible when it comes to promoting academic programming. It does everyone a disservice when ethics aren't considered in this. So being so embedded in this world, there's a potential to overlook certain issues or make assumptions, so I'll have to be mindful of this moving forward in the research. I also have to be cognizant of my own position in this world as a white female and the filter through which I see things because of this. As I interact with the research participants especially and engage in analysis of the data, I'll need to be aware of my privilege and how that will inevitably influence my perceptions of the data, not to mention the access to participants, right? I work for a predominantly white institution, and the groups I'm associated with in the field of higher education marketing essentially lack diversity in a lot of ways. So I'll need to work to ensure I have representation in my participant pool. My experiences as a white upper class woman, who is also first generation American, by the way, have shaped my perspective and approach to research in every way. So the theory that will guide my work was first introduced by Oliver in 1977, and it's been used primarily in the context of psychology, marketing, consumer behavior research. It's called the expectation confirmation theory, and it's a cognitive theory with essentially 4 constructs: expectations, the perception of performance, disconfirmation, and consumer satisfaction. So you can see this depicted on the screen, and really what it boils down to is that your expectations play a role in the perceived performance of an experience. Then there's either a disconfirmation or confirmation of expectations that leads to this level of satisfaction, right? So a few decades after ECT, we'll call it, after ECT was first introduced, additional research determined the importance of marketing communication in shaping those expectations and ultimately the level of satisfaction of the consumer. So the paradigms of expectations, experience, and satisfaction, these are all key elements in my particular research. This theory will guide how I shape my research questions and the way I analyze the data collected. Now, a limitation of ECT from my perspective is that it lacks a certain academic rigor that you might find in other theories. I can't help but think business and management theories, they're looked down on a little bit within the academic research world, but I think there's a good opportunity to transform this theory into something more meaningful and apply it to higher education. Now, in terms of methodology, I'm planning to pursue qualitative research to better understand the experiences of students and learn more about the impact of institutional branding. I can't emphasize that enough, that I really want to get to the impact. So when examining this impact of an institution on experiences of students, research by Harper actually supports and advocates the use of qualitative methods, since you can gain a deeper understanding of experience when you compare this to using a quantitative approach. Of course, I'm not meaning to disparage quantitative methods in general, but it's just that for this specific research and my specific research question, qualitative methods will prove more valuable, given it digs in deeper a little bit to the personal accounts of the students and helps uncover more about the impact branding has on students. So speaking of students, this work is really being done to help protect them from predatory practices. I'd like to think if there's more research conducted around the impact false advertising has on the student, marketing practitioners might be more mindful of what they are promoting and ultimately be more ethical in how they market on behalf of an institution. I also think that work around this topic is aimed towards senior leaders in higher education to make them more aware of how institutions are positioned within the market and recognize that it's important to deliver what you say you will deliver, right? If a marketing brochure, for instance, says that class sizes are small and the average faculty-student ratio is, 1 to 10, then there should be validity to that, right? And if that's an important marketing message and it's not happening in reality, then the leaders within that institution, they really need to make it a priority to change that behavior or experience so that the statement is accurate and they're projecting something true. This project should ultimately create change within the practice of marketing in addition to the way decisions are made about the student experience, whether it be their social or academic experience. So I'm hoping this work will contribute to a few areas, including the extension of expectation confirmation theory into the realm of higher education. Currently, there's little higher ed research that draws on this theory, so there is potential to extend it beyond strictly, that consumer behavior bucket or the marketing research bucket into higher education. This project will also contribute knowledge about the impact of branding. The literature tells us time and time again that branding is influential on decision making and necessary to kind of set expectations and also helps to build loyalty among students or consumers. But there's limited insight into how branding impacts the individual, particularly students. And the aim of this research is ultimately to change the practice of higher education marketers to be more ethical and conduct advertising with more integrity.